Hey guys, so we are in Puerto Rico right now. I'm here with George, he's behind camera right now, and then our friends Kevin and Brian. They're actually right over here, and we are in search of reticulated pythons, believe it or not. So Puerto Rico does not natively have these animals. They actually have a very small amount of native snakes, but reticulated pythons were introduced through the pet trade, and they have become an invasive species here. And over the last couple of years, we've seen more and more photos and videos coming out of these snakes in this area. So we decided to hop on a plane and come on over here for a couple of days and try our luck and see what we could see. Now, right now is the breeding season for them. So what we're really hoping to find are some paired up ones, possibly like a breeding ball, like what we find with the Burmese pythons in Florida. But that also means it is the worst time of year to actually find one because they're all locked up and breeding and not on the move where they're easily seen. So we are doing it in the most difficult way, but if we could figure it out, it'd be really, really cool and amazing to see. So we're gonna try our best and just kind of wander around out here. It's really weird because you could hear dogs in the background, you could hear cars going by. It's all very urban, and we're looking for the longest snake species in the world right alongside like people's backyards, houses, right along the highway. It's been really interesting and cool out here. The roads are wild, super windy and uphill and downhill. Like, it's been really, really cool. But yeah, so we're gonna wander around through here and see what we can find. We'll find some other animals along the way too. We spent several days trekking through the jungle in search of various animals, but I'm going to go ahead and condense all the highlights of the trip into this one video. And this is our view from on top of El Yunque in the national park, which is really cool to visit, but we spent most of the time kind of in urban areas. So we're looking for pythons in this huge bamboo thicket, and I literally just pushed down a dead piece of bamboo, and as it flipped over in the stump was this worm lizard. This thing is insane. So there's two species of these worm lizards. It's an amphisbian. How do you even pronounce it? Amphisbian? Amphisbian? I can't even say it, guys. These are so cool, and like it's just wild. I cannot believe I just found that thing sitting right like. I literally, it was like Brian just said. Brian's holding the camera. He just said it was like pulling a lever, and then it just appeared out of the ground. Like. This thing is so crazy. It's so, we were talking about it and we were like, oh man, that'd be really cool. Like, what are the odds we would ever find one of these things? You know, it's just so crazy looking. And like, I just saw the tail tip in the stump and I thought it was a giant worm. And I'm like, that is a huge worm. I gotta grab it. Look at him, look at his tongue. This thing is so cool. You really see like the musculature of the body separated from the head. And it's got like a dorsal muscular ridge. It's like really neat. Man, I can't believe we found one of these things. Look at that. So now we got the camera in macro mode and taking a look at it up close. You can see the scales, you can see the shimmer on it. In the macro mode, you can see like kind of the musculature and like really clearly see that this is a reptile. It's not a worm. So weird looking, so cool. You can see the separation of the head scales, and you can even see some occasional tongue flicks there too. And the eyes, it's got like little tiny vestigial eyes, and it does bite. It already bit Brian and George, but it's not like dangerous or doesn't hurt. What a cool, weird, crazy little creature. This thing is so neat. Yeah, there we go. Look at the head scales. Totally nerding out on this.
Oh, that's great.
He looks so cool. So here is a Puerto Rican racer in situ, which means undisturbed. It is sitting totally still, thinking that I don't see it. I'm relying on its camouflage. That's one of the native species of snakes here, one of the few. Really cool. He's got a pretty face. Hey, buddy. So he's still relying on camouflage. You know, this is so easy to just walk right on by and not even see this snake at all. So he's just holding totally still, hoping that I just leave and don't notice him. Look at that face. That goofy looking little thing. Okay, we just came up on this huge Puerto Rican boa. George spotted this. Look at that.
Good spot, man.
Wow, that's so cool.
Dude, this thing's awesome.
A muted colored carpet python.
That's literally what I thought. I was like, carpet python?
That's so cool. So he's like in camouflage mode right now, so he's just holding still and hoping we haven't noticed him. We have.
He gave us a few tongue flicks.
Man, look at that.
So...
Look at that iridescence.
Dude, that is literally the biggest one I've seen anybody find.
Yeah, that snake is big. That's really cool.
That is probably as big as they get, and it's so healthy too. So nice to see.
Here's one of the little coqui frogs. You can just hear him nonstop in the background. Check it out, there's a little, I think it's a screech owl, or like, that's what it looks like a Puerto Rican screech owl. I'm not even sure, I don't even know what the species are over here. That's what it looks like. Super cute. Hello, guy. Just found this crab in the stream here. Ooh, he's angry. He's ready to pinch. Stick your finger in there, George.
All right.
There's a tarantula hanging out on a beat box. So we're climbing to the waterfall, and then here's a pair of the Puerto Rican racers. I don't know if they were doing courtship or maybe they were gonna mate, I don't know, but I just came up on them sitting on this rock. Nice, beautiful setting. Puerto Rico has been an absolutely beautiful place. We had such a great time exploring and just adventuring, hiking up this stream to a waterfall. It was just absolutely incredible. Honestly, I spent most of the time just hanging out with the guys and enjoying the scenery and didn't really film very much. So again, this is more of a highlight reel of the trip, but we had so much fun and it was just such a gorgeous, gorgeous place. Check out this old abandoned shack out here. This is like a prime spot. Totally see one up in the rafters or something. That's pretty nice. Check out the size of this huge invasive cane toad. You see that big gland behind the eye? So that is where they produce the bufotoxin. Very powerful poison, which makes these guys such a bad invasive when predators try to eat them. All right, so we just found this reticulated python. It was actually crossing the road just right over there, and we are very excited to find this one. We've been looking for, how many days is it now? This is day
6.
Six? Yeah.
Yep.
Kevin and Brian actually got here before me and George did. So they've been here even longer, and we've been on the lookout for these guys. And so this is just a baby reticulated python. Now, retics are the longest snake species in the world. So this little one right here has the potential to maybe reach up in over 20 feet long. And we have been talking to some of the locals here and been hanging out with them. Actually looking really forward to meeting up with them tomorrow. We're gonna bring them this snake, and hopefully we'll get some time to chat, and I'll be able to show you guys some of the project they're working on. It's really amazing. But they have caught already a couple of them over 16 feet in this area. And what's really interesting, well, they came here through the pet trade, of course, you know, just like the Burmese pythons that are invasive in South Florida. And so these reticulated pythons are invasive out here. But because they came in through the pet trade and there are not really any native predators able to handle any snakes of remotely this size, there are a lot of color morphs showing up out here, like albino reticulated pythons, tiger retics, super tiger, all these different color morphs that are bred through the pet trade as designer snakes are now out here in the wild. And because there are no predators, those ones that would have normally been eaten by predators because they lack camouflage are able to actually survive and spread those genes out here. It's a really weird and unusual situation that is unfolding out here. Now, we're out here with my buddy Kevin, and then Brian and George, and Kevin is like the python guy. He's the python expert. He's the snakeaholic. He's got his snakeaholic shirt on. If you can even see it on there.
Sí, trabajo.
So Kevin was doing a ton of research on these snakes. He's really our trip leader here. And so Kev, how long have these snakes been here and whatnot?
So from talking to the locals and what little information I could find online, these snakes, the original introduction was about 25 years ago. So we know that the Burmese python lives roughly 15 to 20 years. So we assume that the lifespan of these guys is fairly similar. So 25 years, we've now cycled through an entire breeding cycle, entire lifespan of these animals. So essentially everything that we catch from here on out is born of the wild of Puerto Rico. So they've been here a long time, and their effort, the actual impact they have on the environment is not fully understood yet, which is why the research projects that are going on here are so important. But inevitably, these guys are slowly expanding their range and probably eating a ton of the native wildlife that's here.
Well, so that's something we were talking about earlier. What's so interesting here is that, I mean, Puerto Rico is beautiful. It's gorgeous. Walking around, it reminds me so much of being in the Amazon or in Costa Rica, but it is seemingly devoid of snake life. It's really weird that the only thing we've seen are tons of little Puerto Rican racers and then the one Puerto Rican boa, but there are not a lot of native snakes, which means there's not a lot of native snake predators. So these guys have no real pressure on them. And so recessive traits like albinism that are normally weeded out in the wild because you have no camouflage are able to actually flourish and survive here with no pressure from predators. It's a really weird situation. But also, what is very strange is, why are they so successful? What are they eating mainly? The hypothesis currently is invasive rats, right?
Yeah, it's mostly, it seems that the vast majority of what's available for these guys, because pythons in general, they're generalists. They'll eat pretty much anything they can find. However, their favorite food pretty much across all the species is always mammals. It's the most calorically dense, most bang for their buck, so they're always targeting mammals. But Puerto Rico has none of the native mammals that, you know, Southeast Asia and or the mainland United States has. We don't have raccoons, we don't have possums, we don't have deer, we don't have bobcat, none of that. So a lot of what these guys are eating, it tends to be feral cats, feral dogs, invasive rats, even the invasive mongoose that are here. So it's a weird, interesting, you know, dichotomy going back and forth.
But that is not to say that they don't have an effect, because keep in mind that those other animals that are not native here are fluffing this population up to very high levels that then allows that higher population to predate upon native animals at a higher level than they would if they were just native animals here. So it creates more of a problem for natives. It's not like it's necessarily taking the pressure off of natives, but can in fact possibly, this is theorizing here,
Yeah.
but I would say it's very likely that this will increase the impact of these snakes on native animals by supporting a much larger population of reticulated pythons.
Well, it's also important to note that while the animals that I named, like cats and dogs, those are big animals, those are the ones that are feeding the big snakes. But the small ones like this, what we're most nervous about is them eating bats and birds. Now, Puerto Rico has a lot of endemic species of birds and bats which aren't found anywhere else in the world, and a lot of them are critically endangered. So the impacts of these smaller ones could actually be larger on the native wildlife than the truly massive ones, which the only thing they can really eat is invasive mammals. These little guys can get up into trees, climb into bridges, pluck out the native bats, pluck out the native birds, and that is really a bigger problem than the big snakes eating cats and dogs.
Now this snake is so pretty though. Like it's so gorgeous. It's so cool to see this out here. If you guys have been following me a while, you might have seen George and I were in Thailand just about a year and a half ago, and we found a reticulated python there that was actually eating a clouded monitor. It was really, really cool. But because it was in a natural predation event, I didn't touch it, of course. You know, I let them do their thing. I didn't want to disturb them. So I never got to actually hold a retic that we actually found in the wild. Of course, I've held them in captivity. But for me, this is the first one that like we got to catch. Yeah. Which for me is just like, I like to touch things, you know, like I want to hold it. I want to check it out. I want to, you know, observe it and pet it. And it's just so beautiful. And like, it was so cool to see them in their native range, obviously better. But like for me personally, it's just like, oh man, this is so cool. We could actually hold this one and look at it and check it out and observe it, you know. It's so pretty. Now, thankfully, we have been able to link up with the local retic project going on here, and that's where we're going to be taking this snake. And hopefully, you know, we'll be able to show you guys actually what's going on over there, do some interviews with them, and talk about their experiences and whatnot. If they have the time tomorrow, you know, we're going to be able to drop the snake off with them and hopefully talk to them a little bit. Before we do that, though, was there anything else that you wanted to like add or that we discussed? Like, we've been looking for these things for the last like several days, and we're just so excited to find this one. We've talked about a lot of really interesting topics. I don't know, anything else you wanna throw in there?
I think a big thing is just how little we actually know about these snakes in Puerto Rico. And actually, believe it or not, despite the fact that these snakes are one of the most common, actually they are the most common snake skin traded in the entire world. These guys are trafficked all over the globe for their skin. And even though they're so common in the pet trade and so common in the skin trade, very little is actually known about these species. So what's interesting is here, I was doing tons of research trying to figure out, fill in the gaps in their behavioral patterns of what they're doing. Most of the data is literally just not available. We know almost nothing about their breeding cycles, their movement patterns, almost nothing. So everything that the research projects are doing here and every way that we can learn a little bit of data and help contribute that to the projects is actually mapping out our whole understanding of the species, even in their native range. So that's actually what we came here to do, is try to learn a little bit about these guys and try to understand what they're going through. So even though this is a juvenile, the juveniles still provide interesting data, but it's really the big breeder class individuals that tend to have that more vital information to understand how the population is going to expand and develop over time. So we really are breaking ground here by going out and catching these things and documenting everything, you know, to a T, making note of all the observations, every detail. We are literally contributing to the overall understanding of the species and science as a whole.
It's really exciting, really, really cool work. Now this one would be, what, not even a year old yet?
I was born this year, for sure.
Yeah, so it's young of year, so...
July, August.
July, August, so...
Yeah, and we're in January, almost February right now, so maybe 6 months.
6 months old.
Yeah.
Now, the main snake that we've been seeing here, like I was saying earlier, there are not very many native snakes on the island. So the main thing that we've been seeing are these Puerto Rican racers, and this is already, you know, at 6 months old. This is about the size of most of the Puerto Rican racers. Much more thin, most of the ones that we've seen, you know, they're much more thin than this, but most of the ones we've seen have been around this length on their own as adult animals. They do get bigger, of course, you know, but most of the ones we've seen around this size. So you have to imagine that this snake, within you know, a year of being alive, is going to surpass like almost all the native snakes in this area in size. And then within 2 years, it blew past. The only other thing it could be possibly relatable to would be the Puerto Rican boa, which are also a rare threatened species here too. But again, there are not any native predators that are even going to mess with this thing at all, right? The only thing they have to worry about here are the mongoose, which are invasive.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting because in Florida, what we're finding is a lot of the research that we're doing, especially on the east coast of Florida with the Burmese pythons, is that the alligator has filled the niche of being a natural predator for the python, so that the alligators are eating tons of the Burmese pythons. But these guys, we don't even have alligators here in Puerto Rico, so they have
seen some caiman.
We have seen caiman.
Which I wonder if they have had any interaction so far. I mean, I have no idea. There's no documentation of it, and the caiman population, I would say, is pretty small.
Yeah.
You know, relatively speaking, compared to alligators, it is very small. So I don't know if they would even, if they have encountered each other, and then of course, you know, who wins in a fight? That's always the comments I always get.
Yeah.
You know, so it's going to depend obviously on the size. A big retic could easily eat any caiman out there. You know, again, these things get up to 20 feet. Spectacled caiman that are invasive here, usually 5 to 6 feet max, usually. So yeah, that would get munched by a large retic, no problem. But of course, a caiman would have no problem eating this one here, you know, but it's not going to be in any way have an ability to control the retic population like Kevin is saying the alligators might.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very few predators for these snakes. And as Chris said earlier, that's why you're seeing these albinos, which normally would get killed off immediately by the first predator that could pick up on them. These albinos are surviving to adulthood, suggesting that the amount of predators in the area is so low that these guys have an incredibly high survival rate. So we'll have to just see how that shapes up and how it impacts the environment over time. But the verdict's not out yet. We don't really know how they're going to affect the ecosystem here in total.
Okay, so we just caught this huge retic crossing the road, but we are in an urban area, so we're gonna go ahead and bag this one, and we're gonna take it out tomorrow and try to actually talk about it more and show you guys. We're just so excited. How big do you think this one is, Kev?
It's probably 13.
I mean, like
13 feet, yeah.
This is so cool. It's so exciting. But we kind of have to hurry up and get out of this area. And it's 2 a.m. So we're going to take this guy out again tomorrow and try to show you guys more of him then. Ready? All right, so we just took out the reticulated python we caught last night, and we want to take it out during the day, check it out. Also, last night we caught it in a very urban area, and it was like in the road. There's dogs running out, barking at us. We just kind of grabbed it and ran. So we're going to take it out now and actually have a good look at it and check it out. We did measure it. It is 13 feet long. So it's very different from the Burmese pythons I'm used to catching in Florida. Like a 13-foot Burmese python seems like it would be like twice the mass of this thing. It's much more slim, but very powerful. The coils are like it's wrapping up around my thigh right there, over around my other leg over here. Like, it's a very powerful snake, and you can really get a feel for it. But it's so pretty, it's so gorgeous. He does want to bite, so I'm keeping a hold of the head the entire time. Trying to get control of this thing. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to hurt it by holding onto the head like that. You do have to have a good grip. It will bite you. And, you know, what happens if a snake of this size were to bite you? We have an example of it on itself. This snake actually has bite marks from another python here. It looks to be around a similar size. Right there, down over here too. And where else was it on there?
Yeah, there's another one in here.
Yeah, look at that. So those look to be, I don't know, several days old at least. But we're talking about it, and we're thinking that is from mating. Do you think that's from another male or the female itself?
I actually don't know the correct answer to that question, and I'm not sure that anybody actually knows the correct answer to that question yet. This is stuff that's still going to have to be understood by science, but I do know that with the Burmese pythons, it is fairly common for the female to bite the male when he's trying to court her, trying to convince her to mate with him. she will get pissed off that he's all up in her face, and she will bite him multiple times trying to scare him away, get her to be like, hey, leave me alone. So it could be that, but also we know other species like rattlesnakes and a lot of the vipers that are native to the United States, they tend to exhibit male-to-male combat, where two males will fight over the same female. So it honestly could go either way. It's kind of hard to say. So either way, it's very definitively snake. When you look at like a bite like this, like if you come in close and check this out, there are 4 rows of teeth. That means this is the top jaw of a snake. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't think of any other animal that would be here that would inflict a bite like that.
At first when we saw it, we thought like it was maybe from you know, a dog, if it grabbed a dog or something. And we looked at it, it's like, that doesn't make any sense, and like they're gaseous. Like it's pretty crazy, but yeah, it definitely makes sense now that, you know, we think about it from the teeth in there. I wonder if we could.
Probably not.
Pretty strong.
Yeah, probably not, and the teeth are always covered by the sheath.
Yeah, not gonna try, but
it's important to note that we can guess the size of the snake that bit this one based on the size of this one's mouth.
you can see them in there a little bit. So the teeth are covered by a sheath, so you can't see much, but you can see the little needles in there. You're okay, buddy? And I mean, just look at how deep some of those are really deep.
Yeah, this one down
Like
here.
this thing's not messing around.
Chewed on. Because it's not only a bite, it's constriction.
Yeah.
Like that's why these lacerations are so deep, because a defensive bite would be bite, let go. These are not that. These are either predatory or, you know, very, very aggressively like, hey, get out of here. So
I think this guy wouldn't leave.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But you can tell, like, look at these. Those are deep lacerations. That's constriction. That's bite, and I can personally attest to that because I've had Burmese that have bit me and not let go. And once they throw those coils, those teeth start dragging, and they can make some pretty serious lacerations. I have some permanent scars on my body from situations just like that.
You should have seen his face before, guys.
I wasn't always this handsome.
This thing's strong.
Dude, very strong. And it's crazy how it keeps backing up too.
Yeah.
It doesn't go, like, it's going backwards the whole time, which is exactly the opposite of when you catch a Burmese. They're always going forward, forward, forward. This thing is like 80% moving backwards.
It's I'm just holding the head like very loosely. It's holding itself up right now, like pushing like that. Like it's really interesting the way it's trying to like back out like that.
Yeah.
Now I know people are going to ask, you know, like, this is the longest snake species in the world. How dangerous are they to people? And this is one of the few species of snakes that is known to occasionally try to take people as prey when they get really, really large and the person is not very large. Sometimes reticulated pythons are known to grab somebody and kill them and attempt to eat them. Usually, though, they cannot actually consume the person because of our clavicles, the shoulders. You know, it sticks out too far, and usually they just constrict the guy, kill him, and then they can't really get it down usually. But I don't want to get too far into that because it gets very gruesome and fear-mongering, and we'd rather just appreciate how beautiful this snake is. It's an amazing animal, but we do want to point out, you know, it is a potentially dangerous animal at the same time. Obviously, if you know what you're doing, it's really not that bad, but if you don't know what you're doing, one of these coils, I mean, it's got my fist pretty tight right there. If one of them gets up around your neck, yeah, you will be put out pretty quickly. It cuts off blood circulation to the brain. It's just like a martial arts when you choke somebody out, you know, you put them to sleep. It's not like in the movies where it's like, oh, I can't breathe, it's crushing my ribs and my lungs, which, I mean, yeah, that can hurt too, but really what's going on is cutting off circulation to the brain. You fall asleep, you go unconscious from that, you know? I cannot get my hand is in a permanent fist now. This thing, I mean, look at him.
Yeah. And I think he picked up. Did you notice how as soon as you tried to pull your hand out, he picked up on it and threw a second coil?
Yeah, look at that.
That's intuitive. That's complex thought, you know? You want a hand?
Well, I want to look too at the heat pits on here. You want to come closer? Have a look, George. You see it's got heat pits on the bottom jaw too, which is really cool and different. Usually when you see the Burmese pythons, they have the heat pits all across the top jaw. This one has them on the bottom jaw too. The very striking yellow eyes. I mean, it's a beautiful snake. It's so cool. Like, So excited to see this guy. I wasn't playing that up. Like, that was insane. It's so strong. I mean, they are constrictors. That is what they do, you know? This is super cool. This one's pretty dark though, compared to like the young one that we got. You know, it's funny. We did like all of the talking points. You want to take out the young one too? We can do that. Yeah, we got them both right here. We're actually, we stopped at a creek that is right next to where we're going to be dropping these off for the university. So we're on our way to go drop them off. Just want to stop and check them out for a second before we hand them over. You can see them side by side.
Yeah.
That one looks darker too.
Yeah.
Yeah, at night I think they're...
With the light bouncing off of them, it looks so much brighter. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, does anybody talk about them lightening up though? Like crocodilians do. When you catch a crocodilian, like, they're very bright at night. Like, you can take them in the same conditions with a flash. Like, they absolutely change color. So I'm wondering if these guys kind of...
Snakes are, don't you?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think they do too. That looks darker, like considerably darker.
Yeah, it does.
But when you look at them, I mean, that one is like 6 months old, and then this, 13 feet long. Would you even have an estimate how old this one would be?
I would assume it'd be at least 10 years old.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that we always look at with Burmese is we look at the head size, because some of these snakes, when they have an abundance of food, they grow in length very, very quickly. That snake has a very big head, so the skull size does not catch up with the body size when there's an abundance of prey. So seeing how big that snake's head is, that means that it actually does have some significant age to it. So that snake, I mean, to reach 13 feet, it's got to be at least 8 years old.
Yeah?
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be any younger than 8 years old. 8 to 10 is probably a safe bet.
Man, these things are just, they're so cool. The iridescence is so cool. You know, like when George and I were in Thailand, we spent a lot of time looking for these. And we found them, but the one we found was eating the monitor, so we couldn't actually handle it. You know, I said this the other night when we had the little one, but it's just so cool, again, for me to be able to like actually handle them and hang out with them and like, I don't know, it's like a dream snake. You know, I'm sure you feel the same way. Like when you're a kid, all the books, these are in all the books, like the longest snake in the world. And it's like, it's so cool to finally have your hands on one and find one in the wild, even though it's not in the right place. Yeah. It's on the wrong side of the planet, but I mean, we still caught him in the wild. Like, it is just so cool.
It really is. They're just such a fascinating species, and it's just crazy to see something online, in a book, pictures of it for years, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's right there in your hands. Absolutely insane. I mean, I even remember that when Brian and I found our first wild corn snake. Like growing up in the Northeast, they don't range that far where we grew up, so you never see them. You only see them as pets. And then all of a sudden, one day we find a wild one, blew our mind. Same thing with these. I've seen plenty of reticulated pythons in captivity, but to come and see one in the wild is absolutely surreal. It's just an amazing experience, and it's an absolute dream come true. Not only did we get one, but we got two, and we got one that has some serious size to it, some serious mass.
This one's calming down.
Couldn't really ask for more.
All right, so we're gonna try to hold this thing up and show you guys the actual size of it.
Yeah, we'll take a couple steps back. It's a big snake.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. They don't have the girth of like a Burmese, so like it doesn't look as big and bulky, but like when you stretch this thing out, I mean, it's look at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know when it's on the ground like that, coiled, people are like, yeah, it's not 13 feet. Yeah, I'm 6'5". Look at this thing. Like,
yeah,
that is nuts.
Yeah,
that is an impressive snake.
I mean, 13 was my estimate, and I said 12 and a half to 13. We put the tape measure on it, right at 13 feet. So my estimate was extremely accurate.
Man, those gashes are so crazy.
Yeah.
That's just from trying to mate. All right, so we're just dropping off the reticulated python with Luna here. She's in charge of the retic project here in Puerto Rico. We got the snake out, and gathered some people checking it out. Yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, when did they start? How did they start? All that kind of stuff.
Well, the first snake that we saw over here was in the early 2000s. It was basically the pet trade. The pet trade over here was a big boom in that year. So after that, we've just been catching a lot of these snakes on the wild. So maybe since the early 2000s.
So we're doing research on it, you know, and we found what we think is like the originating spot. And supposedly what we had read is that the guy had snakes and then there was like a drug bust or something. Is that true?
That's what everybody says, and it was true. He did have a lot of exotic animals there, so he was in the drug business. So when the cops were going in, a lot of snakes got out, a lot of monkeys, and that's how basically they started in this area. So
okay, wow. And then how many do you think that you've caught, like with your organization?
So in the last 4 years, we're hitting the 1,000. 1,000 snakes. The last time I checked, it was 932 at the beginning of the year. So we found a lot of during this year. So we're hitting that 1,000 snakes.
Right. Yeah. And like, if you think about it as like a population density kind of thing, like in Florida we have the indigo snake, which are federally listed as threatened, very, very hard to find. So if you find one, it's like, oh wow, like that made your year, you know, they're very rare. But when you think about it as like a population, just having that one animal means there's still an entire population across, you're just not seeing them. So once the density gets high enough that you're seeing them frequently, you're talking about like an exponentially higher actual population out there. So if you found 1,000, I wouldn't be surprised if these guys are, I don't know, tens of thousands?
Yes.
Probably, you know, it's
There's a lot of
crazy.
A lot of jungle here.
Yeah.
And we're just basically finding them on the streets and closer to the houses. So imagine in those mountains, how many can there be?
Right. I don't know. Is there anything else that you, I don't know, kind of want to
No, I really
include in this?
appreciate. Yeah, no, I really want to appreciate you coming and helping out, you know, with the project and trying to keep these out of Puerto Rico. We're always, you know, trying to help out and receive anybody that wants to, you know, be a part of this.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the snakes and
Thank
doing
you.
your part out here.
Thank you so much.
All right, we literally just left Luna.
Luna! Bien aquí!
We can still see her. This is insane.
They are right there with the lights.
Look at that. That's so crazy. Talk about an invasive species. Man, this is nuts. There's a lot of them out here. This is so pretty too. Look at that thing. Oh my God, this is so crazy. Hey, we missed you so much. We're back again.
I thought you guys were leaving.
Oh no, we missed you too much. We had to come back. Look at that.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Right from my house.
Right there. Look at that.
Maybe it's not too late.
Yeah, I know, right? You can always change the trip.
Well, we did all agree. Like,
Let's just go that way.
yeah, let's go 200 feet.
Look at that.
Get in.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just pass this off to you guys. Anybody got a bag? That's so crazy. That's so wild.
Look at that handsome man right there.
Hey.